Hello, and welcome to the 2 Minute Warning. I am your host, Perry Busby. Uh, Welcome to another edition brought to you by the West Side Gazette. And the publisher of the West Side Gazette is my honor to introduce the co host, Mr. Bobby Henry. Bobby, how are you doing tonight, my brother?
Perry, I am terrific and getting better. And you know something, man, you always make me feel special when you allow me, to come on. You know, you really do, and I'm appreciative of that. And I want to tell everybody that I really thank you for how you have done this and how you're doing this, and we really appreciate it. So, Perry, I'm fine. How you doing back from the jazz festival?
I'm doing good, man. It is um, truly an honor to be here. Um, uh, as I say, this really just started out as a small idea, and just to see this grow and it grow us. Like I said, I couldn't have a better partner in the foxhole
Hey, you
to
know how
help
we
get
do.
this done, man.
And
And
you know,
it's been great. And I look forward to uh, this each week. I mean, it's become a special time for me, and just glad to have this time to spend with a good brother.
yeah, man, thank you very much. And speaking of a good brother, my condolences go out to you and your family and the loss of your friend. Uh,
Yeah,
I understand he was a Curtis Mayfield, a family member, if I should name Mayfield.
yeah,
And I'm
yeah,
just,
yeah.
so you have our condolences, Perry.
Oh well, thank you, man. Yeah, these uh, it's been a year,
Hmm.
and as I was saying, I mean, as you know, it seems that time. What's that old song? Time is filled with swift transition.
Oh man.
Man, just the amount of things that have gone on since the last time we were here together.
Hmm.
You know, I mean, we were. I think the last time we were still expecting to hear a verdict.
Hmm. Before the
And in
verdict.
the midst of a verdict, yeah, in the midst of that, I mean, we've gotten a verdict and two more cases,
Hmm.
two more incidents. Um, you know, this this is really. Um, I guess Bobby. Honestly, I guess I. What is wrong with us that we're not that we don't want to just call this what it is? That this is a systemic epidemic.
Hmm. Hmm.
That I think we somehow either it's too hard for us to articulate or what I don't know. I'm totally speechless.
You know, if uh, if life imitates art or vice versa, I think Marvin Gaye asked the question, "What's going on?" long before this. So
Yeah,
it's nothing new. But you're
yeah,
absolutely right, man. This laboratory that we find ourselves in, where it's almost like we have to wear some lab garbs to engage in this experiment of
hmm,
annihilation, if you will. It's
right,
man, it's but Pierre, if as we let's bring it home a little bit. Let's get a little closer. We have elections coming up. We had to replace a great man, and I know we can do this on another show, but we're about to try to replace a great man, and in doing that, we're also about to risk losing some very prominent seats in our legislature that will throw us for a loop. So I mean, we're dealing with all kinds of stuff, bro. So.
yeah, yeah, and to that, I mean, I I, I don't want to keep saying I'm new to the area. I'm not new.
No.
I'm not new to my community. Uh, but if there's one thing that I think our community is crying out to our leaders, who we love immensely.
Mhm.
Uh, you got to love us better. And leadership is about sacrifice. And I don't know how best to put it, but you know, when we I'll see them fought for what they fought for. I think we got to fight for what we want. And I'm looking for a leader like that. I'm not looking for a leader to replace LC. You know, but you know, I don't know. I hope for the best for this seat because there's a lot that if we don't get it right, it hurts us most.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I know these are good people, and I want what's best for all. But we got to think about what's best for the community.
You said something earlier about a leader and sacrificing. On another front, our superintendent, so in the program we're going to talk about tonight, I hope that it's not relived through an experience.
Right.
But man, people who have preconceived power or some
Yeah.
financial clout, they still want to look down on those of us who are less fortunate. Uh,
Yeah.
and unfortunately for our superintendent, as frivolous as the charges may be,
Yeah.
as asinine as they may be, he may uh, in beat the rap, if you will,
Right.
but that damn ride might be a little bit too rough,
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And this too is nothing new.
yeah,
We've
nothing new.
seen it. I mean, even uh, Beaumont is nowhere near uh, the size of Fort Lauderdale, Jefferson County is nowhere near Broward. Uh, but I saw this same thing happen in black leadership there. And so we've got to get better at understanding it and seeing it and being able to fix it because I feel like we're on a hamster wheel with this,
Hmm. Okay.
you know. And so we got to be better at our leadership and surrounding them. But yes, this hurts us as frivolous as it is. I mean, that promise program,
Hmm.
which we know has always been in the crosshairs. I mean, it stands to be at risk.
Yeah.
And we just got to be honest about this. I think I think we try to be. I don't want to use cliche terms and click, and it's not about being politically correct, but I sometimes what's the saying? Sometimes you got to be profane in order to be profound.
Hmm. Hmm.
You know, I've had some good cousins that taught me a lesson or two to
Ooh, he said
authenticate that
what?
message.
Ooh, he said what? No, he didn't. But yeah, yeah. But man,
Yeah,
we got a great show coming up here, and
yeah,
uh, in this in this arena, you know, sometimes we don't want to deal with it. We don't want
mm,
to um, open up to the penal system that house some of our loved ones.
mm,
We don't want to put that on the front burner. We want to put it on the back. But it's something that we need to take a look at and to
yes,
understand more. We should have been doing this a long time ago.
yeah,
Not running from it or being ashamed of it, but uh, confronting it head on. So
right, yeah, yeah. Uh, because Michelle Alexander, and I forgot the exact numbers, but I think as far back as 1971 or 73, I mean, we had less than half a million people in prison.
hmm,
There's only a couple of 100,000. And so, has society got that corrupt? I mean, I think that's one of the questions we have to start asking. Is has society got that corrupt, or and we all know the profit motive behind it.
Okay, okay, okay.
So I mean, so it has got corrupt, but I think there's been some disillusion about who are the corrupt.
Mm, mm, okay. Well, let's do it, man. You ready?
Okay, yeah, I'm ready.
Okay.
Um, I'm gonna let you start us off.
Okay. Well, the person that I'm about to introduce is no stranger to 2 Minute Warning. We had an opportunity to have her on some maybe a month or so, 2 months ago, and the work that she does, and how she was able to get people released from prison. She has the Can Do Foundation. It's a 501c3 foundation where she works in trying to bring people home. And we'll talk more about it. But I want to bring Amy Povok on, and let's uh, listen to Amy a little bit. Where are you, Amy? Okay, while she's getting ready to come on, I'll talk a little bit more about her. Amy founded this organization back when she was released from prison. Uh, she'll tell you more about her story, but she did about 18 years incarcerated and came out swinging. So I don't want to rob her thunder. Um, oh, here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Okay. Hey, what's up, Amy?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on. I love the 2 Minute Warning and what you guys bring to the table. It's a wonderful platform, and we have a whole bunch of wonderful people who are either were on home confinement or are currently on home confinement, and we really need to talk about this. It's an interesting topic.
Okay.
Great.
And
Well, you know what? Let's let Amy introduce.
Oh, okay. That's a great.
Okay. Well, first I'll give just like a little teeny preview. I served 9 years on a 24-year sentence and received clemency from President Clinton. And that's when I decided to start the Can Do Foundation when I got out, because I met so many amazing women in prison who were all there under the conspiracy law. And that means that if you do one thing, even if you're a spouse, a girlfriend, you rode in a car, you happened to be in the house when a raid went down, quite often you're thrown into the indictment and held responsible for all the actions that everybody else who are co-conspirators have done. And then the feeding frenzy begins, where if you cut a plea and you testify, you're no longer susceptible to mandatory minimums. But those who go to trial, the odds are pretty great that you will be convicted, and that's who gets 20 to life. So that's what happened to me and everybody who's coming onto the show. I'd like to introduce Rufus Rochelle, who's no stranger to your show either. In fact, that's how I met you, wonderful gentlemen. Rufus is going to come on. Shanita Mcknight. Now I think she goes by Shanita Cosby. She was a lawyer and was convicted for a white-collar crime. She was serving home confinement, but received clemency from President Trump, so she's free from home confinement. Unfortunately, Rufus is still on home confinement. And then we have two other wonderful ladies, Diana Marquez. All of these people were on the Can Do website. We were advocating for their clemency, but sadly, Diana did not get it. She was serving time for pot, 30 years. She got 30 years for cannabis, while other people are raking in millions. So we were a little disappointed there. And Shanita Mcknight, I hope she comes on. She's going to join us in her lunch hour. So she's on home confinement, but she also works from 2 p.m. to 11 at night. So if we can bring them in to join. Yeah, that's everybody.
Dap.
Hey, how you doing, Rufus? Hi, Shalena.
Good evening, all. Mm-hmm.
Hello. And I tell you, what a blessing, to be back here on the distinguished guest here. This is wonderful. This is a milestone, and here in Broward County. And Father, I want to thank you, Mr. Rosa, and Mr. Henry, for being kind enough to bring each and every one of us on this particular platform here. And I am actually excited to be here. This time. This is my first anniversary, shall I say, of freedom. That was April the 24th. April the 24th was my first year out of prison in 32 years, 32 calendar years. So I celebrated my first year of freedom in 3+ decades, shall I say? And I think what carried me upon, my freedom, and two, shall I say, what kept me in line with myself was primarily because the fact that I never kept my mind inside of the prison gates or wall. I often took my mind out of the prison, and I never considered myself a convict or inmate, that type of setting there, and I never believed in decorating the rooms and walls and stuff like that, and because that lead to you actually considering those places as your home, really. Once you get settled in, and then you start calling those places your home and stuff, and then it becomes argumental with others individuals. So I never did those type of things. And I focus more on walking out the gate. And I always knew that God one day was going to bless me to
Yeah.
live to see the outside of the prison. And that came April 24th, 2021. Although I'm on home confinement, without getting that mistaken, because, I am still incarcerated, because they still, instead of the knee on my neck, they got the knee on my ankle, or the shackles on my ankle.
Excuse
So
me,
I'm
Rufus.
still incarcerated.
Hold on. I don't want to miss any of this that you're telling me. And it's
I look at it from a positive aspect. My outside of prison is far better than some of many of the men and women that I left behind. So that gives me the initiative to keep fighting for those men and women that I left behind.
Hey, Rufus. Okay, Perry, go ahead. You guys' attention now.
Yeah, Rufus. You've got a great. You were telling us something really important, and we couldn't hear it. So we're gonna have to try to fix your audio.
Wait 1 second. 1 minute. 1 second.
Okay.
Hey,
we'll come back.
Hey, Zach.
Ari, you want to take him off?
Take him off.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Shalena, your mic is muted. Shalena McFarland, I first of all, congratulations. So honored to have met you, and looking forward to hearing your story of how you got here.
Well, thank you. There are two things that I need to mention just really briefly. One is I'm so excited to be here with Mr. Bobby Henry, who I had the honor of working for in 2003 as a freelance reporter. I used to turn in a few little stories for the West Side Gazette when I lived in Broward. So it's good to be home again. Hey, Broward County, I miss you
Right.
guys. I'm currently in Atlanta, but hopefully I'll be visiting South really soon. Uh, and the second thing is you mentioned about Congressman Hastings, and it struck my heart because I was there when he was Judge Hastings, and he's always going to be Judge Hastings to me. And when I was at FAMU on those 7 hills, I participated in the demonstrations about when they were trying to remove him from the bench. And so when I have followed his career, you were talking about his legacy and who could replace him. No one can ever replace him, but his example lives on with people like me, in that when things happen to you, you can still move forward, you can still reinvent yourself, and your latter can be so much better than your former. Because if he had just gone out of the public eye after the way that they did him, which was so terrible, and not push forward, just think how much would not have happened. So for everyone listening that has had a struggle of some sort, whether, I look at it, I served 16 years in the Federal Bureau of Prisons custody before receiving clemency. And that's a lot of time. But when you look at how many years Mr. Rufus served, I just take my hat off, because it's people like him and women that serve those amounts of time that helped me get through and put one foot in front of the other every day. Because I would look at them and I would see how they were living, and I would say, she's already done 20 years. If she can do it and get up with a smile, then I can do it. And so it's all about encouraging each other. And my story is pretty cut and dry. I was a closing attorney in Atlanta. I got caught up in a mortgage fraud operation, and I decided to go to trial because I was not guilty of what was in my indictment. I did not deliberately conspire with these people to defraud any banks or anything. Did I do some things that weren't right? Yes. But it was done mainly because I was an inexperienced attorney. And not wanting to relitigate the case, but there were just so many things that were wrong. And this is a system that I took an oath to uphold. When I got sworn in as a licensed barred attorney, I truly believe that there was justice in America. I can't say that anymore. And that's a very profound statement. And, but I'm not bitter about it. I just understand how much work needs to still be done. So when I was sentenced after I lost at trial, the judge gave me 360 months. So that's 30 years for those that are trying to do the math. And of those 30 years, I did 16. And then the CARES Act came out. When COVID hit America, everyone's talking about social distancing and the need to sanitize. Well, when you're in prison and in jails and incarcerated, you can't do any of those things. You live in communal housing, you have to share toilets, showers, sinks, and there's no such thing as 6 feet. You might get 2 feet on a good day. So we knew that when COVID was coming in, because even though when you're isolated, you may not be able to contract it, but the officers are bringing it in because they're going home every day to their wives and their children, and they're eating out and they're not wearing masks and so forth. And then they come to work the next day and they infect the rest of us. So we knew what was going to happen, and we were afraid of dying. And the CARES Act came along, and it said that if you had done at least 50% of your time, you weren't a security threat to the community, and you had medical conditions that would make you vulnerable for harsh consequences should you contract the virus, you could be eligible to serve the rest of your time on home confinement. So previously you could only serve home confinement in your last 6 months of your sentence. So they altered that. I get called one day and they tell me that they're going to allow me to go home on an ankle monitor. So for people to believe that these people are just being let out and allowed to run amok, for those that are saying that, they feel that America is not safe with us being out. We're on an ankle monitor. We're monitored more harshly on the outside than we ever were on the inside, because it's a GPS monitor and they know exactly where you are within 3 feet on the planet. They can't say that even while you're inside. I remained on home confinement from June until January when President Trump signed my clemency, which is the direct result of Amy Pova advocating for me, even though I was not a drug offender. She just looked at my sentence and said, "This is so outrageous that we have to do something to help you." And I promised Amy that I would do all that I could to bring other people home once I got out. And so I got out on June 9th. I called Amy from the car and said, "Okay, where do we go next? What do you want me to do?" And she's like, "Okay, take a couple of days." No, let's start now. And I have hit the ground running. Amy is such a wonderful role model. And she's allowed me to use my voice and sit on behalf of Can-Do on many panels. And I'm able to really tell what's going on the inside, because people don't know. There are a lot of people that want to support legislation, but they don't know how, or people that are writing the legislation. They never bother to ask the incarcerated, what is it that you really need? What are the conditions like in there? And, you know, on a personal note, I had a young lady who was from my hometown that I sort of was a big sister to on the inside, and she walked me home to release that day so I could process out. And her name was Jay and Saphiria Johnson, and she said, "Okay, I'll see you on the other side." And I gave her a big hug, and she had about maybe 2 or 3 more years to do. And I told her, "I'll look out for your boys as soon as I touch ground." Well, less than 6 weeks later, at the age of 36, Jay passed away from COVID.
Wow.
And that was a hard pill to swallow, because she had medical conditions and they knew this, but because she had not done 50% of her time, they didn't want to process her out. But the thing about it is that as COVID and the angel of death is flying through these units inside a prison, they don't stop and tap you and say, "Have you done 50% or not?" It's ridiculous that these type of standards are there, and something needs to be done about it. But for those of us that were able to get transferred home, we are extremely grateful that there was even a program to start.
Okay, I had a question I wanted to ask you, but you sort of answered that question right there. My question was, and I want to say, help us understand why clemency is an important tool for the president to exercise so everyone can come home.
Well, clemency is an executive power that can only be exercised by the president for federal inmates. A lot of people don't know, there is no federal parole unless you are a very old case or you're from the District of Columbia. But for the majority, 95% of all federal inmates, you're required to do 85% of your time before you're eligible to be transferred to a halfway house or home confinement. With that being said, clemency is an avenue to allow people to be redeemed. If you have served your sentence and you've done the right thing and you've corrected your behaviors and you've gotten a trade, you've learned how to live among people, and you've shown remorse for your actions, you should be able to receive clemency and come home. The warehousing of people is just wrong. America is the only civilized industrial nation in the world, that has the number of people incarcerated. We have the greatest incarceration rate in the world. And when you think about that, that makes no sense. And if you just look at my case, here I am, a lawyer, a tax-paying citizen, and you give me 30 years for mortgage fraud. Well, who does that benefit? My 4-year-old daughter had to grow up without a mother because the judge decided that he wanted to make an example out of me. And unfortunately, brown and black people are bearing the brunt of these examples. And it's just wrong, and there needs to be a spotlight placed upon these injustices.
Oh.
I'd like to add, if I could, that we have engaged with the Biden administration, and we are asking for clemency for everyone on home confinement as a category, so that people who are on home confinement will not have to return to the BOP and ease their anxiety. because nobody really knows what their fate is going to be.
Well, as it
And
stands right
Amy,
now,
you say the BOP. Can you please explain to us what the
Sorry.
BOP and how important that is?
Right. I forget that all your listeners haven't been to prison. Probably most of your listeners haven't been to prison. But BOP stands for Bureau of Prisons. We say DOJ. That stands for Department of Justice. Those are the people who prosecute us. OPA is Office of the Pardon Attorney. That's where we send our petitions. But yeah, if you're serving time in a state facility, it's the Department of Corrections. And if you're in a federal facility, it's the Bureau of Prisons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Did we explain the difference between home confinement and compassionate relief? Did we talk about that? Did I miss that? And I was so engaged in what you were saying, Charlene. Your presentation, your presenting is so overwhelming. But did we talk about that?
I'd like to set this up for Shalana.
Okay.
Shalana came highly recommended, and she was so gifted and talented in prison. She started filing compassionate releases under the First Step Act, and she was largely responsible for the first woman to get compassionate release. If you'd like to share that and explain the difference between compassionate release, because you were getting people out before you got out, Shalana.
Mm-hmm.
well, you just let God use you wherever He plants you. So that's all that I did. It wasn't me. It was He just worked through me. So let's be clear about that. I was just a tool. But under the First Step Act, it allowed for two major changes: one, compassionate release, and the other was the Elderly Offender Act. So briefly, with the Elderly Offender Act, if you were 60 years old and you had served 2/3 of your time, you could put into the warden to be transferred to home confinement. So and home confinement is where you're basically on house arrest and you have an ankle monitor. So that's home confinement for elderly offenders. Then there was the compassionate release. Now, previous to the First Step Act, you would literally have to be dying within days of death for you to receive compassionate release, which is where they end your sentence and allow you to go to probation. But under the First Step Act, they allowed you to, it broadened the categories. And so you could apply to your warden, and if the warden did not answer within 30 days, then you're allowed to go to your judge and ask for relief from the judge. And in one case in particular, there was a young lady, and she wasn't sick, but her daughter was terminally ill and at 26 years old. And so she wanted to go home to be with her daughter as she died. And collectively, myself, Shanita, and a few others all pitched in to write her motion. And we filed it. She filed it with the court, and they granted an immediate release. And immediate releases are the best things ever. What that is they call you up to the office and they tell you you're going home today, like right now, go get your stuff. And so that is what she got. And she came running in and said that she was being released, and we all celebrated. And since then, I've worked with Amy. We've worked with the University of South Carolina. We've worked with Emory University students to help write compassionate releases for people that are inside that have circumstances that necessitate that they go home. And so we're doing that. Unfortunately, we are a nonprofit and we're 100% volunteer staff, and we just don't have the wherewithal to handle as many cases as we would like. And then there's the CARES Act, which provided for home confinement due to COVID, and that's a separate type of home confinement. But with that one, there was a memo that was left over from the Trump, as once this pandemic is declared over, all the people that are on home confinement must be returned to prison. And as of today, President Biden has not rescinded that memo. And so we've asked that he grant clemency to all those people that are currently on home confinement. Now, when you're on home confinement, you work, you live with your family. So can you imagine coming home, bonding with your kids again, getting a job, you know, just starting your life over again, and then they call one day and say, hey, it's the pandemic's over, you got to come back. It's ludicrous, ridiculous, and absolutely cruel. And that's where we are right now. So Amy and I and Can Do and the Justice Roundtable and many other organizations are all fighting to have this memo rescinded or a categorical clemency. Why not go ahead and give the people clemency and end their sentences and let them go ahead and transition to probation? They're in the community now, they're working. Why keep them? It doesn't make any sense.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Typically, how long is the? I'm sorry.
no, you all right. I just
Typically,
wanted to, if I could, I just wanted to,
uh-huh.
since she mentioned one of the ladies that's supposed to be on the show, she's in the back. So maybe this is a good time
Okay, great.
to bring that. That's all. Maybe,
Okay. What?
okay.
No. Let's bring.
Yeah.
Let's bring along.
Amy, you want to do that?
Yes, Shanita Mcknight is an amazing woman. She also received home confinement and was serving time with Shalana at Coleman. And she's here on her lunch break, so it would be good if we could bring her on because she is a hard worker. Ever since she got out, she's been working, and she only gets her little lunch hour to join us. So if Shanita could come on, come out from backstage, as they say, and on to the show. And we also have another lady, Diana Marquez, who will come on if, Shanita's camera is off and she can't come back on, apparently.
Okay.
So let's bring Diana on, which there she is. And Diana is the lady I mentioned earlier who's serving 30 years for cannabis, which is a crime unto itself. And if people will remember, there was a campaign promise on the campaign trail. You know, Kamala definitely said that all marijuana prisoners would be set free, would be released. And so far, we're still waiting to hear on that. Diana, how does it feel to be on home confinement? And why don't you go ahead and share your story?
Okay, I feel blessed. I am extremely blessed to be at home instead of being in prison. But I was praying so hard to get the clemency granted by the President Biden, to be able to they hug my mom, they see my oldest kids, my siblings, my grandkids. I'm extremely blessed living with my baby daughter. But yeah, I feel happy and blessed to be at home. Yes, I am.
We understand, Diana, that you're living with one daughter in El Paso, and you have children and a mother in Nebraska that you can't see. Explain that to us, please.
Yes. When I was released on May 22nd, year 2020, I asked to be relocated to Nebraska or Iowa. And they told me they weren't able to do it because the coronavirus, and they have to transfer all the paperwork over there. So they say, nope, you have to go back to Texas. So my baby daughter has to quit her job, and we have to start all over again here in Texas because she was living over in Nebraska. And because of the coronavirus, we have to stay here in Texas. And guess what? I contracted the coronavirus while I'm here. By grace of God, I'm alive. He gave me the second chance to survive, to live. And I'm here. I'm survived. I'm strong. God is the one that left me over 15 years, almost 15 years that I spent in prison. Thank God, I'm extremely blessed. Yes, sir.
Oh, is that Shanita coming in? Okay.
Shanita. Hi, Shanita. Can you hear us?
Yes.
Well, we would like to hear from you, and we're waiting to.
Maybe we should let people know that we're coming from all over the United States.
All over the United
All
States.
over. So if we're experiencing some technical difficulty, that's because we're not just in one central area. So please.
I'd also like to add that, Diana, didn't you say your mother recently fell and she's not doing well, and the anguish that you feel because on home confinement, you're still really technically in prison. It's just that you have to stay in your home and get permission to travel, which is usually denied. So how does that make you feel when you don't know whether you have to go back and you can't go see your mother?
I feel bad because I just call her every day, like she's not able to take care of herself. My oldest daughter live with her, but my daughter is deaf. So thank God. But that time that my mother fell, my daughter passed by her room and she saw her lay down on the floor. So they helped her to stand up and put her in bed. And I talked to her yesterday with my mom, and she says, "Mija, I wasn't able to stand up. My body was all weak, and I had to drag myself and hold her by the rail to the bed and stand up." And it made me feel bad not be with her, to hug her, to help her with her needs. My baby, no, my youngest sister is the one that sees her a lot, sending nurses to check her meds. It's hard for me. I asked the counselor in the warehouse if I'm able to visit her, and she says no. I'm not able to go to shopping to the store, maybe because I contracted the coronavirus, but they only let me go to the grocery store. To the park too. They don't even let me to go to church, nothing else. I'm staying here home. I'm limited, and they only give me 2 hours to go walk, which it helped me a lot because I have like a heart disease, and it helped me a lot to go to walk. But other than that, they don't give me permission to go nowhere. So yes, sir.
I'm sorry. Is there compassionate relief for home confinement? I mean, is there such a thing? Is that doable, if you will? Shanita?
I am on home confinement.
Yeah.
I qualify for the Care Act criteria based on my medical situation because I was at risk to contract the coronavirus while I was in prison. But yeah, I did contract it. My daughter and my grandson contracted too, but I was the only one that attacked me more. I had the same symptoms, but God is so good. Yes, He lifted me up, so I'm alive. Thank God, I'm here, surviving. Yeah, I'm on.
And with Amy, so with such an open end to this, if the Biden administration, I guess, decides, not to give clemency, I mean, how does that respond into the process for even going back and deciding who goes back? I mean,
well, to answer Bobby's question, even when you're on home confinement, you can file a compassionate release. It might be a little bit tricky, but you still can put a motion before the judge after you jump through a couple of hoops. And Diana, I don't know if you've tried that yet. Have you tried?
I did apply for compassionate release while I was in prison, and the warden denied it to me. And I guess maybe because I wasn't the list for the CARE Act criteria, because 2-3 days after she denied it to me, they called me for the CARE Act. But she denied it to me. Yeah, I did apply for the compassionate release, but the warden and the institution denied it to me.
Well, after the warden says no, I think you still can go ahead now. I don't think there's a time bar on that, and put a motion before your judge. And since there's a lot of anxiety around whether people will have to go back or not, let's talk about that as you being a candidate.
Right. There is, if I can just read this viewer, the level of anxiety that we experience with the idea of having to go back to prison is beyond what you can imagine. It is simply cruel. And that comes from Ortez Fez, I'm not pronouncing the name, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to assume they're on home confinement as well.
Mhm.
And I can't even imagine. I frankly can't imagine.
And
Um,
one of the things
Okay.
that I need for you all to understand and for our listeners to understand is that when you come out on home confinement, all of your expenses, your living expenses and things are on your family. So the Bureau of Prisons does not provide any money for you. In some cases, they will provide limited medical care, but like with me, when I had a problem with my teeth and they said, well, unless you're having an extraction, we're not going to pay for a cleaning. Well, I hadn't had a cleaning in 12 years because of the amount of backlog with people that need dental care in the Federal Bureau of Prisons. So I ended up having to pay almost $300 for dental work out of my pocket. So we are not a burden on the taxpayer when we're home because we're having to foot all of our own expenses, and it's hard. Your family has to provide you with clothing, food, a place to stay, transportation. They don't provide any of that. And so a lot of us, the biggest thing is that you come out, you've reestablished your life, you've gotten a job, you may have gotten a car, you've bought clothes, and now they're saying, oh, okay, well, with a phone call you can be pulled back to prison to finish serving your sentence. It's insane, not to mention the emotional ties that it's hard to rebond with your children. And how do you tell your child, well, don't get too attached to me because I may have to go back? I mean, that doesn't make any sense. My daughter is 21 years old now, and I just can't imagine what it would have been like to have to tell her, well, mommy might have to go back. So that's one of the reasons why Amy and I fight so hard to try to get this memo rescinded. And it's just simply, it would be for Biden to just say, okay, you don't have to go back. It's just that
Okay,
simple.
no, Shalema, you said that you're no burden on the taxpayers because you're paying your own way. Well, what would be the objective to have you go back into the prison system?
Well, when you go back into the prison system, the Federal Bureau of Prisons gets about, I believe it's $34,000 a year for each person that they incarcerate. But when
Stop
we're
right
on
there.
home,
Let's
Stop.
stop
Yeah.
right there. Now let's say this again. You're no burden on the taxpayers. And the only, well, when you go back in, the government gets how much you just say?
it's around 34,000, 32,000. It goes up each year. We're worth more money each year.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah. And
mm.
which leads me to a deeper question, and that is, has pay suspended for the prisons in this process as well? I mean, because again, we know the profit motive is there, but has the pay been suspended? Because again, I mean, we assume these things, and I think that that's one of the you know problems that we're beginning to see in this. I mean, if there is no budget hit, then why would Congress be in a hurry?
Hmm, hmm.
Well, it's affecting Federal Prison Industries, which is also known as Unicor, which is a for-profit corporation that operates within the Bureau of Prisons, and they make everything from furniture to parachutes to uniforms. They have operate call centers,
right.
and they have contracts where they get discounted labor. And so they're losing money. They're hemorrhaging because with the COVID lockdowns, they're not able to, the population inside is not able to go to work as frequently. And then you have like a lot of people that long timers like myself and others who work there, and you start out at 12 cents an hour, and after working there for over 10 years, I had reached the maximum pay, which is $1.25 an hour. And
Top grade.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Well,
And
we have
total
a lot of
violation of
people.
labor laws. I mean, we won't even talk about the
Yeah,
labor laws, right?
but
Yeah.
we're considered, we work management level jobs. They don't call us managers, but we basically run the factories and the call centers for them. So now we've been released, and they have a lot of people that don't really know what they're doing. But the good thing about it is that, with everything, there is always a brighter side, is that it does teach you valuable skills when you get out that you can translate into real world experiences. So, like, for instance, with Shanita, I'll speak for her. She worked at a warehouse, and now she's a shipping and receiving clerk. She was able to come out and go directly into the office because of the experience of what she had, because as a former police officer, obviously she can't go back to her previous experience. And so I help a lot of ladies with writing their resumes to translate their skills, and most of them are doing extremely well. They've gotten promotions because one of the things, we're so happy to be home. We work really, really hard.
Mhm. Let me ask you this for Shanita. She's not on. Okay, she was able to to have home confinement, and then she got a job. And does she have to wear that ankle bracelet on her job?
Um, okay. Shanita's situation, and this is something we've been battling with all week. When Shanita has lupus, so she cannot wear the ankle monitor because her leg swells. And for the last year that she's been home, she hasn't had to wear it. When she was released from the Bureau of Prisons, they said there was a note that said for her not to have to wear the bracelet. So she checks in by phone. They call constantly for her location. A new director comes into the halfway house that monitors her and says that he doesn't care that everyone has to have a monitor. So they put this monitor on her 2 days ago, and she sent us pictures of how her leg is so swollen that you can't even put a finger behind the ankle monitor. So now it's a health risk. So when she goes back to the halfway house and shows them, they say, "Oh yeah, that's horrible. We see what you're talking about, but we can't take it off. Here's a phone number for you to call." So for the last 3 days, she and I have been calling this number, and no one will call us back. So we can talk about her medical condition, because if she cuts it off, then she's in violation and she goes back to prison, where she'll surely die because she has an autoimmune disease. So this is the type of foolishness that we
Mm.
have to deal with, and it's wrong. Here's a lady that's come out. She's gotten a job. She has excellent reviews at work. She took her lunch break to try to dial into this
Nice.
show so she could talk about what's going on, and there's no one that wants to help her. It's
Mm.
just insane. And unfortunately, her story is not the only one. And the short answer to your question is yes, people have to wear their ankle bracelet to work.
Mhm.
And so, if you can get a job, you try to wear long pants so people don't see it, or even when you go into the grocery store. When I had mine on, I remember being in Walmart, and the lady just looked at me and grabbed her kid and went running down the aisle. And I'm like, I, I, it was just it's humiliating and it's
Yeah.
embarrassing, but it is better than being in prison. So we're not going to complain about it. But are there other ways? They have watches now that look like Apple watches that they could give us that would help reduce the stigma of of being on house arrest. Uh, but you just take it little by little. But when it comes to a health issue like what she's having, that's something that needs an immediate attention.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
no, going back, typically from the time you file your initial uh, request, how long does that take before you're finally, I mean, through the CARES Act, through by the time you're finally released?
Well, with the CARES Act, you have uh 30 days. You apply to the warden, and then they have 30 days to answer. And if they don't answer, then you can go to the court under compassionate release. I'm sorry, under compassionate release. you can do it that way. Because what was happening previously is that people would file and then they would take so long to answer. By the time they actually got an answer, if they ever got one, the people were usually dead. So they said, okay, we're going to redo this under the First Step Act, and we're going to expand compassionate release to allow you to apply directly to the warden. And if the warden doesn't answer within 30 days, you can go home. Now, with the CARES Act, you can ask to be considered for CARES Act release, but it's up to the Bureau, to your institution, to decide who gets it. So if you're Michael Cohen and you have a 36-month sentence, and you can get out and go home. But if you're someone else that, like Kim Robinson or Terrence Cole, who needs to get out, it doesn't work that way for you. So it makes a big difference. And unfortunately, it varies from institution to institution.
So even though the CARES Act provides this, they gave no requirements for how to set the benchmarks for this, and so it's just totally left up to
Well, they have
bureau.
criteria. They have criteria.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be low security or minimum security. You have to, they say, I think it reads something like those with 50% or more of their sentence will be given priority processing. So it doesn't say if you have less than 50%, you can't be considered. But most institutions say if you don't have at least 50%, they're not even going to look at you. And the other is you have to have CDC documented or medical conditions. And I just had a discussion with a lady today. She's 70 years old, and they told her that being elderly is not a CDC requirement that they're going to honor. So because she doesn't have any other medical conditions, but she's 70 years old, and that within itself should be automatic release at the fact that elderly people are something like 15 more times greater to die from COVID than a younger person. So they do have criteria, but they pick and choose which ones they want to apply and when, and who you are. And there's just no sense to it. So you have to just keep writing and arguing and fighting with your case managers to get them to put it up to the warden to see if you can be released. And then there's also an issue where if the institution recommends you for it and it gets to DC for processing, your prosecutor at that point can jump in and put a stop to it and say, no, we feel that this person is should not be released back to the community.
Yeah. No, and here's what I really want to get at, because you're saying that, and what I'm saying is, first of all, congratulations and for all the great work that you're doing. But is this taking 6 months? Is it taking how long? Because and the flip side to that is really what I'm saying about having to go back. Because if it's much easier to go back than it is to get out, then we've got a systemic problem.
Perry, can we do this? Can we bring Miss Shanita, Shanita on? I think she's trying to get in.
No.
No, she's not
okay,
here.
we missed her again. Okay.
Yeah, no, but for each success, how long does it actually take?
Everyone's different. It seems like every situation is different. We did have people who were told they were going home and they were literally there at the gate. Their family members were in the parking lot, and like Shalana said, DC or somebody stepped in, or the criteria, they started changing their minds. This was in the height of COVID when it was on fire in the prison system. And then the person was told, no, we've changed our mind. You're not going to go to home confinement. So we've got a lot of stories like that, but every situation was different. And some institutions wouldn't release anybody. If you had a nice warden or a warden that was a little bit better than another institution, You know, some people made it home. But Rufus is on now, so let's see if we can hear from Rufus.
Rufus probably engaged in 3 or 4 different conversations. I think that's going up to his ear.
Rufus,
All right.
Okay,
Hey, you know, first of all, you know,
cut the phone off, Rufus.
We got feedback.
Hurry up, mute. Okay.
when I previously stepped out of prison, I guess maybe a month and a half after I stepped out of prison, I addressed Congress. Are you there?
Yeah.
A month and a half after I stepped out of prison, I addressed Congress. Not only the top congressmen like Nancy Pelosi and others, I addressed the Black Caucus as well. And I informed them of the danger of the coronavirus once it hit inside of the prison. And I also explained to them the areas that they were using in order to quarantine individuals upon getting the virus as well. And I let them know that many of the men, and I assume women's also, were being at a man facility, because many of them were in fear or scared, shall I say, of possibly dying behind bars, although there wasn't sentenced to die behind bars, because as someone said, you know, that the COVID-19 doesn't ask you, do you get out tomorrow, or how much time you have, I'm gonna pass you by and all of that. No, but by the same token, I explained to them that many of the men were in fear, and there's no way you could practice staying safe in those places when they're giving you a mask every 3 or 4 weeks. And then not only that, you got 3, as one of the young ladies stated in reference to the way you live inside of those places, because certain rooms have at least 2 or 3 people inside of the room, a little room where the sink and everything is located. So there's no way you could practice being safe inside of an environment like that. And then the fact is, well, you got to buy hand sanitizer, because everybody don't have money to purchase the hand sanitizer. And then the fact you got to continuously washing that mask out too and hanging it up, you know, and the fact, you know, just the overall medical facility is a joke, really. So there's no way it's more difficult to stay safe inside of those places. So we understand why they say a person is 5 times more likely to die inside of there rather than a person out that's here at home, because of the danger inside of those particular facilities, you know, the living conditions inside of there, you know. And then 2 is that you got various staff that comes in and out of there that is not, you know, reject the COVID treatment. So what do you get out of that, you know? So you know, it's sad. You know, that's what I will say, you know. And I even did a podcast for Business Insider and spoke in reference to the virus. So this being stated loud and clear. So you know, what better individuals to speak about the danger of that scenario than the ones that's entrapped inside of the prison. We were trapped inside of the prison, so we know what inmates, you know, individual men and women are going through on a daily basis in terms of this particular COVID-19.
If I could, now, just as dangerous as it is inside, with COVID. Now the fact that we got Diana who had come home, but she contracted the virus. Now talking about sending her back. Now let me ask you: what was your thoughts? Did you think that you were going to die when you were?
When I contracted the virus?
Yes.
No, I'm not afraid to die. And I always been telling my daughter it's like a flu with different names. Before it was pneumonia, different names. Now it's coronavirus. I had my body get weak for 3 days because I wasn't able to eat nothing. So I tried to stand up and I was go back to bed because I feel dizzy. No food in my body. And once I heard my daughter told me, Mom, with the COVID test, it's positive. We have COVID. And I heard my grandkids screaming. Oh, they were so scared. Once they hear that we have COVID, they were crying. And I said, stop, Mija, stop. You're scaring them. But no, I never been afraid to die. But yes, I have a hard time to breathe and coughing. And my daughter called the ambulance, the 911, and the paramedic checked me. And I see my grandkids crying, my daughter crying. I guess I get strong myself back, and God lift me. And the paramedic guy says, your lungs are clear. We don't have to take you to the hospital. And if you want to stay here, stay here. Because the fear of my daughter was to take me to the hospital and come back in a box. Because people with COVID go to the hospital and get out from the hospital in a box straight to the cemetery. So it was my daughter afraid to take me to the hospital. But no. I'm always trusting God that He's taking care of me. And thank God, I'm here. I'm still here.
Okay. What I was trying to ask was, in prison, were you afraid that if you had contracted COVID, that you would die in there?
And there, okay. Well, I was in a federal prison camp, and I was working in Unicor, and we had the privilege to go to work every day, and we were packing hand sanitizer. So we always take care of ourselves to cleaning, and they give us. We had the priority to have a clean mask, face mask every day because they give us as a Unicor workers. We have the privilege they take care of us. Yes, like Miss Shalana says, we start earning with 40 cents and then 60 something until $1.08. This was the last payment that I had. But yeah, I was afraid to die there. Not able to see my mom because I haven't seen her for, I guess, 6 years because she's 92 years old. And I really, really prayed and asked God to be completely free to be able to go and hug her and help her, caring of her, take care outside because she live in her house as a prison. She don't go outside. She stayed inside. So I talk to her every day. And she said, Mija, I'm praying for you. Even she has a bird, and the bird learned how to pray like her. He started praying with my mom. Yes. And I said, Mom, God is listening to you.
Bobby, I think there's two things that Diana hit on that I think are super important. One is that, and I don't know if you picked up on it, but she talked about Unicor, which is Federal Prison Industries. When you work for Unicor, you get treated better than the general population. So if you want to equate that to a plantation, the house slaves eat a little bit better than the field slaves.
Right.
It's the same mentality because they were given better masks, more masks. They were given hand sanitizer, whereas Mr. Rufus said that they had to scrape up the money to buy the sanitizer, and they got one mask every 3 weeks. So there is if you work for Unicor, which is why so many people go because of the privileges. It's not about the money. It's because you get more. And then the thing about it is, yes, she contracted COVID outside too. So for those people that would say, well, what was the point of letting her out? because she got COVID anyway. The point is that her daughter could call an ambulance to the door to see about her. But if she were in prison, the way it works is if you need to see a doctor, you have to get up in the morning from 6 to 6:30. You go for sick call, you fill out a paper and say, this is what's wrong with me. And they have up to 10 to 14 days to respond. They don't take your temperature unless you literally throw up in the floor there. And even sometimes then they'll tell you go lay down. But most of the time they just tell you to go to work. Go wherever your detail is, go ahead and report. So you have people that are saying, no, I'm really sick, I need to see someone. And they say, we'll call you. And it never happens. And it's so there is a big difference with the quality of care that you can get being with your family. Also, when you're inside, you're limited on what kind of medicines you can buy. You know, they have all generic products. There's nothing with any kind of alcohol. There's even the hand sanitizer doesn't have alcohol in it. So it's like you can't get medicine like, you know, you want to go to Walgreens or CVS and buy something to make you feel better. You can't. You can't make you know, you can't eat the foods that you want to make, you know, like when you're home. There's just so many differences in the quality of life, even if you were to contract COVID on the outside as opposed to the inside. On the inside, we make tea, we make chicken soup, everyone pulls together. If you don't have money and someone's sick, they go room to room and say, hey, Mr. Rufus doesn't feel good, do you have a soup that I can make for him, or do you have some tea bags? And everybody pulls together, and that's how we have this bond from being inside that makes us like family, because we are all that we have to take care of each other. When we get sick and you're too weak to get to the shower, somebody's got to give you a bath. Because
And I'd like to add, while Shalane is frozen, that at Coleman, they started telling the women they had to go over to the men's institution to there were some common areas. And that's how, and Shalana can clarify this, a lot of the women contracted COVID because they were forced to go over to the men's institution, whether they wanted to or not, and work. And it was on fire at Coleman before it was in the women's institution. Laz Ordaz is a woman we're trying to get clemency for. She got COVID. Another woman, Adrienne Miller, she did get clemency. She got COVID, but they were being forced. And Shalana, you want to, on top of the fact that Legionnaire's disease literally rampaged through Coleman, you guys just had it one thing after another with regard to a series of illnesses that rampaged through Coleman.
Coleman is a federal correctional complex that's located between Ocala and Orlando, and it has 25,000 inmates. So there are 2 federal penitentiaries, a men's low and a men's medium, and there was a women's camp, which has now been converted to a male camp. The women were forced to go inside the male institution and work in food service, because the officers were calling in sick because they didn't want to come in and catch COVID. So they were banging out. So staff had to be moved to cover the security side of things. And so that left food service, laundry, and commissary without enough workers. So they would send the women in, they would lock the men down and force the women to go inside. So what happens, the women then come back, they're sick, and they infect the rest of the dorm, and it goes all the way around. And then we knew way before the CDC that it was possible for reinfection, because there were people that got sick more than one time. So now the CDC is saying, oh, yes, we're noticing trends of reinfection. Well, if you looked at federal prisoners, you would have known that this was going on before. And the way that the Bureau of Prisons gets around it is they don't have to report positives for when they don't test. So they just refuse to test everyone. So then they can say, we have 0 positives at this institution. That doesn't mean people aren't getting sick and passing it around. Diana knows, you know, when one person gets sick, it spreads like wildfire. And we are all that we have to take care of each other. The nurses don't want to come in. There's one doctor for 500 and 600 inmates. the level of care is like, you just would not believe some of the things that we've seen and we've witnessed, and we've watched people actually die because they would not call an ambulance.
Wow.
Excuse me. When I was, when I spoke in front of Congress concerning COVID-19, and Nikichi Taifi is the one that introduced me and brought me up there. Brought me up on Zoom to address Congress. Nancy Pelosi and Sheila Jackson Lee and others, and they suppose that came to an agreement that they were going to get the women's out of prison, move them out of prison that was impregnated. I don't know if they ever did that, and that's what was stated when I spoke up, in front of them, a little after I walked out the prison gate on home confinement April the 24th of last year. So I don't know whether they followed through in reference to that, released the women that was impregnated, because in reference to this virus. So, I don't know. But what I do know is the fact that too many of us are still incarcerated in prison. And that's a fact. Because, it's no use continuously playing softball with them, because we got to raise our voice, in terms of the situation. Because the fact is, there are too many of us held in those prisons that truly deserve to go free. Not just on home confinement, but clemencies or whatever other available remedies there is. Because out of 24,000 people that got caught up, that got released under the home confinement, if I'm not mistaken, only 4 people caught new charges. 4 people out of 24,000. So, there's no situation in terms of the recidivism, in reference to home confinement. There are people, it's working. So my question is, why would individuals have to go back? Diane, she caught the hearing. And that if you question her in reference to what was stated during the hearing, she knows exactly what was stated, Diane Marquez, because she caught the entire hearing. And I think she informed me it was 2 hours and something. And they came to an agreement at that particular hearing. Am I right, Diane?
Yes, sir.
So can you inform them somewhat, touch on the fact what was stated, what the agreement they came to, if you will? Are you there?
Let's do this. Let's do this. We are at a point now where we need to come up with some workable solutions. So what could we ask or present to those in the listening audience of some action steps that we can take collectively? What can we do? And I know, Amy, that you and Shalina are overworked. So how can we get our listeners involved in this whole effort? What can we do? You muted.
You're muted.
Unmute.
Sorry. To answer your question, one of the reasons why I thought The Loudest Voice would be a good title for this podcast is because we all have to raise our voices together as a community, as a collective, so that we do become the loudest voice that has to be heard. And we need everyone to encourage the Biden administration to focus on criminal justice reform, prison reform, and a clemency initiative. We've already given our suggestions that we are hoping for some categorical clemencies for people who are on home confinement, the elderly, people who've already served a certain amount of time. Some people say 20 years. I think after 10 years, every year that you're there, it starts to eat into your soul. And you're not going to be a better person coming out of prison after serving 12 years or 15 years. You need to get out while you're still employable, while you can still manage to get a decent job and build your life back. You have to get a car. You have to get housing. And you can't do that if you're released at 60 or 70 years old. People aren't going to give you a job, a long-term job. So we have a lot of work to do. And President Biden, I feel, sort of owes us one on this because he has admitted that the 94 crime bill was a mistake. And he's done a lot in his first 100 days. But one thing that we're kind of waiting to hear, and we're getting crickets, is criminal justice reform. And I think that should have been one of the first things that he addressed, given the fact that he did have a bad track record in the 90s where he wanted more prisons, more prosecutors, the forfeiture implemented on everybody, forfeiture laws that were, arrested for drugs. And so we're needing everybody in the community to weigh in, push harder. You can write op-eds. You can write an email. All you got to do is go on White House website, and you can send an email to the White House. And I have a feeling that if a whole bunch of people started doing that, maybe we would see some movement with regard to clemency and criminal justice reform.
Can we put that address?
You need to speak to your senators and your Congress people when they ask for your vote. You need to let them know that criminal justice reform is important. And we understand that people commit crimes and that there is a penalty and consequences to breaking the law. So we believe that if you've done something wrong, that you should have to pay for it. But the sentences are draconian. There is nothing good in taking someone away for 20, 30, 40 years when they haven't killed anyone and they haven't, it's not a violent crime. It is, and even if it is a violent crime, people can change. They can be rehabilitated. And at some point, unless they're given a life sentence, 95% of all federal inmates are going to come home. So the question is, what are you going to, what are they going to be like when you release them? And it is just so important. And it's also important that you support organizations like Can Do. You can go to candoclemency.com. We're a grassroots organization. We don't get funding from any major sources. We take small donations. So if you believe in what we're doing, please go to our website and you can click donate. There are other organizations. There's Fighting for Freedom with Karen Morrison, who's our sister organization, who does tremendous work in the Virginia area and on the federal level. There are so many organizations that need your help. And but our website is a clearinghouse for people that are serving sentences that need attention drawn to them. We have the top 25 men and women that need your support. You can click read about them, go to their change.org pages. There's a YouTube video that Can Do and myself supported for Terrence Cole. It's called Terrence Cole, The Redemption Story. It's on YouTube right now. Go look at it. And you can see the differences that people are making from at all levels. So don't feel like because you're sitting on your couch that there's nothing that you can do. Put that phone in your hand to good use and tweet, post, and just do whatever you can to help draw light upon this situation.
Okay.
Last night, when the president spoke, I'm sure I heard him speak in reference to criminal justice reform. Next month, he gave, Congress, and the Senate, in terms of he want this addressed next month. Criminal justice reform is one of the initiatives that he spoke of, and we gonna hold him to the his foot, our feet to the fire, or whatever, because that's very important, because I left so many men and women behind in those places, and I'm not just in this, based on my situation. I'm in this because I sympathize with those men and women, and they're silent behind bars. You can't hear their voices, but I know there's many tears that's being shed tonight as we're speaking, as we're discussing the situation at hand. And they are asking us and need us to help them come out of those places. Because when you look at the George Floyd cases, there are so many cases behind bars. Individuals got in hell in those places for situations just like some of those, that same case right there, in reference to the officers, law enforcement, just like the incident there in Louisville, Kentucky, where the detective had lied on various individuals, had them locked up on murder charges, numerous individuals on murder charges. And then they found out he lied. And he entered a plea of guilty, and they got him just for tampering with the evidence and gave him 1 year behind bars. But you have men and women that's held in those places for long periods of time. And that's so sad. And there's numerous of them that are in those prisons throughout the United States the same way. And as Amy stated, Biden owed us, the president, based on the crime bill. And I was in here. And I've seen the complexes going up. And I know what it did to our families. So, and it's time. It's time to, bring those men and women that's held in those places for no good reason home. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I see we've covered a lot of ground here. Did we miss something? Is there something pressing that somebody want to say as we begin to wrap this up? Diana, how about you? I know you and I had a conversation before this show a couple of days ago about some situations that you got to deal with. Is there anything that we haven't heard that you want to say?
But about what is your question? What do you want me to say? About the hardship to go see my mom. That's what I've been praying so much that I would like to. I mean, I'm praying the God tender the President Biden hard to sign all petitions, or not for only for me, for everybody, to be completely free, to be able to be productive to the society. Currently, I'm not working because I don't have a picture ID with me, but I'm gonna get it soon. But I really want to work. I want to be productive. I want to show people that I'm not the same person I was. I want to show my family that I'm not the same one either. So I want to open my own business to work, to be productive. which I have a lot of experience and have a strong background in office skills. While I was incarcerated, I did a lot of, I take a lot of programs, especially office manager. I'm good with numbers. I'm good with numbers, and I used to take care of the numbers of the whole facilities in Carswell. And I really want to apply my skills. I want to work. I want to be productive to show that I can do it, that I can show more than what I say. That's my whatever I'm asking the Almighty God, and I have a faith that's coming soon. Not only for me, for Mr. Rufus, for all of us, for Miss. I don't know how many people are in home confinement. I have a big box right over here, my ankle, and it's bothering me. Like it's like the one Mr. Rufus having in his ankle. It's bothering me during the nights. Like Miss Chalana says that her, I don't know, can Misha, what is the lady name? It's her bothering her ankle. It's bothering me too. It's bothering me too. It's heavy. It's heavy. It's not a lie. It's heavy. I have to put like a knee brace to hold the box up in order to not swing on my ankle. It hurts me. Yes. That's what my.
This is it. This is it right here. This is it. This is what we want right here. This big thing. And the danger of this, which I hadn't heard any individual speak of, is the fact when you go in various places and individuals look down at your ankles, a lot of time, you know, it could, no, I'm not going to say a lot of time. I say this. Someone could mistakenly thinking that you bringing something in there that's dangerous, you know, and you could get shot, possibly, you know, behind those things, because the fact is they're looking at your ankle and it looks like, man, you've seen it, you know, and that right there, that's very same thing right there could cause you to lose your life, you know, because a person look at that doesn't know what it is, and the first thing he's going to perceive is the fact that you bring, it could be something that might ignite or whatever. And because I never seen nothing like this here until they put it on my ankle, you know, and it looks like man, I don't know what it looks like. It's time for it to go. I know that, you know, it should, you don't need it. It seemed like they could have made something a lot smaller, you know.
Okay, well, we're gonna kind of wrap it up here. Our producer is the mother of 2 little girls, and they got school tomorrow. So we're gonna go around and wrap it up. Amy, if you can, give us one directive to follow. Give us, I know we talked about writing letters or something, but give us one simple directive that we can build on to attempt to eat this big elephant that's in the room.
I would encourage everybody to get involved and also to share your information with relatives, with neighbors, because when I came out, nobody in my neighborhood had even heard of the conspiracy law. I call it the slack jaw, and frankly, I'm getting tired of explaining that one person can go to prison for what somebody else did, and that person who, I'll use Michelle West's case, murder, entered into a plea bargain, never served a day because he testified against other people. So somebody's got a murderer as their next door neighbor who never served a day in prison, but his testimony was deemed to be enough to convict other people. And if he wasn't in that plea bargain, the prosecutor would be asking the jury to sentence him to life. But instead, once you do that plea bargain, suddenly your word is gold, even if you're a habitual offender, even if you have no credibility. We got to stop the plea bargain process. We got to get the community talking about this. We've got to scale back the conspiracy law. And we need everybody to get involved by going to websites like my own, the Justice Roundtable, ACLU. There's a lot of different organizations who are boots on the ground. Educate yourself and then share this information, because as Shalana said, it's slave labor. Once I got to prison, I realized why they wanted the wife of the ringleader. He cut a deal, never served a day. I went to trial, got 24 years. I couldn't understand why. All I did was run around and collect some bail money. But when I got to prison and I heard about Unicor starting off at 12 cents an hour, I went, oh, okay, now I get it. So people just need to be woke. We need to understand what the motive is behind all of this, what's driving this. We got to take money as an incentive out of the Bureau of Prisons. And once that money dries up, they will start releasing us and letting us go home, I promise you. But people just need to start sharing this information. And thank you. Your podcast does a lot to help educate others, because that's the key.
Okay. Well, Shalana. Is Shalana frozen there? Okay.
No, I'm here. I'm just technology challenged. I just want you all to leave with the understanding that there are a lot of good people who are behind bars, and your mistake does not define who you are as a person. You just made a mistake, and there needs to be an understanding of redemption and second chances, because but for the grace of God, it could have been you. And it's important that we lose the stigma of turning our noses up at formerly incarcerated people. If you have a business, call the halfway house and say that you need some workers, and I promise you, you'll get some of the hardest working people that you have ever met. Because one of the things that it's impossible to leave prison without having a spirit of gratitude, just to be grateful, to be able to walk outside, to see a blue sky, to smell a flower. It changes your perspective. The things that, and sometimes it takes people maybe 2 trips or 3 trips to get it, but eventually the light bulb comes on. And also, what you need to understand also is that prison is a waste of your tax dollars. The federal prison system does not prepare people for anything. They house people for slave labor, and that's it. They say that they have educational programs. They have a GED program for which there is a tremendous waiting list and a very poor passage rate, unless you get someone like me or Amy or Diana that can help tutor you so you can pass the test. And there are very few vocational programs to teach you a trade. And really, people sit around all day. They work for unless they work for Unicor, they work maybe 3 or 4 hours a day. And the rest of the time they nap, they read books, they gamble, they do arts and crafts, and watch TV. They can tell you every TV program that comes on that you don't even get to watch in the real world because you're actually working. So my suggestion is to let these people go home where they can work and take care of their children and become the mothers and fathers that God designed them to be. And it is just so important to know that there is a path for redemption. And when you see someone that's getting released, you don't have to give them a handout necessarily, but just encourage them to and just say, hey, welcome back. And that is just so important. And for those that are formerly incarcerated, if you went through the struggle, then you need to get with the rest of us so that we can support those others that are coming out, to have programs that are available and provide support, clothing drives, housing, help people, because there's a problem when you come out with founding housing if you're a felon. You can't live in a lot of apartments. You can't rent houses. There's just so many obstacles, and so there's a need for that. So I would just say, just help people get on the right path to redemption.
Okay. Mr. Busby.
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you to Amy and Shalana, Diana, and Rufus. Uh, I don't care how much Bobby and I could have talked about this. You guys put flesh and make this story real. And I can't thank you enough for being a not a symbol, but a living testimony of what's possible. Because we all know that there are plenty others, uh, probably more uh, capable and probably more qualified to have been released. But by the grace of God, we're able to talk about the subject on the other side. And I don't want us to forget those who are on the other side. And I'm like Bobby. Every time Amy, you come on, I feel like there's so much I need to do, and I feel, you know, and, but thank you, and we've got to continue to pull back the skin on this onion because it requires all of us. There's not a family I know that isn't touched uh, by this prison system. And like everything else, I think that on the other side of this, it's not so much as what do we need to do to fix it. We need to reimagine what it is for people uh, to pay their debt to society. But also, as I look at all of you all, it's not that the prison system is getting the worst of our society; they're getting the best of it. For all the ingenuity and entrepreneur that you guys have put into this, I mean, it's amazing. And again, I from the bottom of my heart, thank you, Amy and Shalane and Rufus and Diana, for making this story real. And we've got more to do. And again, we've got to make time. And anytime you want to come back and bring these, not these stories, but these lives to us, uh, we're just going to have to keep it in front of people. And so you've got an open invitation. We have got to fix this because Shalana, you helping you guys are helping people in prison. Imagine what you could have done, as they said, in the free world. And the free world needs you because you're finding out it's not so free on this side. But thank you. Please and come back again.
Okay, I too have the same sentiments about thanking each one of you. Everybody said something that pulled at somebody's heart, and I'm hoping that those who had their hearts strings pulled, that they cooperate in doing what we need to do. Shalana, you said something earlier. I'll never forget this about the money. You're not a burden on taxpayers, but you are a commodity for a prison system, and I'll never forget that. The other thing is this. I want to say, when we come back again, Nikichi, and Rufus, you mentioned her name, and you did too. Amy Nikichi Taifa. There are several soldiers in this war on knocking down the barriers to keep people incarcerated. So we all have to work together. And then I want to say this. Uh, when one door of happiness closes, another opens. but often we look so long at the closed door that we do not see the one that has been opened to us. And that's from a person who couldn't see. That's Helen Keller. So our eyes are wide open. Let's continue to work to open the doors of freedom for those who are incarcerated and who really deserve the right to come out. Let's put the pressure on this new current administration. I've heard a lot of things, but I haven't heard anybody really talk about bringing those people home from behind those bars whose life could be saved as opposed to keeping them in the infernal of hell with all of this COVID and all of this other stuff going on. So let's join forces and doing what we can do to try to bring some people home. God bless you all. I really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to the next time. God bless you.
God bless you.